Normally, when I sit down to do a video, to record a podcast, whatever, it's because I feel motivated and it's something fun that I want to do. I do this as a hobby. This is not my, I'm not a professional content creator. I don't get paid for this. I don't have a Patreon, none of that. All 3 channels that I run are fucking ass with no subscribers. So in a way, I feel like this is a waste. Why am I doing this? It feels like a waste of time. But even if I have 30 subscribers on a particular channel, even if only like a handful of people are watching my content, I still feel like that's an audience, and I have a certain responsibility as a quote unquote content creator to be transparent. Okay. And because one of my passions, one of the things that I cover very, very often, especially on my 3rd channel, which is Wrasslin World Wrestling, is deeply connected, inextricable from the world of professional wrestling. I feel compelled to get my thoughts out there regarding one Vincent McMahon. Now, the news broke, I don't know, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I don't know, however long ago, that this Janel Grant case took the media by storm. But because it's in the public eye right now and people are talking about it, yeah, it's a big deal. I mean, if you're a fan of pro wrestling, if you're a fan of the WWE, I mean, that whole world got turned upside down. For as long as I've been alive, in all of my 43 years here on Earth, Vincent McMahon has been at the helm. Or at least, I don't know. When did he take over? I feel like, I don't know. I was born in 1980. I wasn't watching Hulk Hogan when I was an infant, but it wasn't long after that, Rocky 3 came out, and all of a sudden Hulk Hogan's this big fucking household name. The early 80s, mid 80s, or whatever. Since then, Vincent McMahon has been at the helm. He's the guy that was responsible for taking pro wrestling from this thing that was, territory based. It was kind of a niche genre of entertainment to this global sensation. Right, where we have figures like Hulk Hogan, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, that make their way into Hollywood, that make their way into the public sphere, into pop culture. So there's no denying that this guy, he is a massive public figure. And given the content that I like to create, whether we're talking about the Casting Stones channel, which I run my mouth just talking, you may be watching this on that channel, or Wrasslin World Wrestling, which is its own other whole fucking thing where I do these fake wrestling matches with, it's a basically, celebrity deathmatch type thing, in which I use video games like WWE 2K22, 2K23, whatever, or Fire Pro Wrestling to create, look, the bottom line is pro wrestling's been a big part of my life, okay? Again, I said I didn't want to get too long-winded on this. It's been a big part of my life from the mid-80s all the way up to, the early 2000s. I fell off when WWE bought out WCW. When the Monday Night Wars era came to an end, that was the beginning of the end for me as a fan. Okay. I do remember the ruthless aggression era, right? When Brock Lesnar first came into the fucking limelight. I don't know, what is that, about 2002 or whatever? I was about 22, 23 years old. I followed it up to that point. And while I haven't been a fan since, right, the CM Punk days, the Miz, Randy Orton, all these like figures that people know, Cody Rhodes, that all goes over my head. I don't really give a fuck. I guess partly because I became an adult and grew up and stopped caring about this shit. But also I feel like, and this is maybe for another video, for another conversation, there's a certain quality that pro wrestling lost at that time. And again, that's neither here nor there. Again, I said I didn't want to make this a whole long-winded thing. I want to get right to the fucking crux of it. So let me not wade into the waters of confusion and fucking hyperbole and all, whatever. Like, I just want to talk about Vince McMahon. We all know the allegations. We've heard about them. Janel Grant versus Vince McMahon. That's a lawsuit that is currently going on. Vince McMahon stepped down from his position. I don't know. And I get confused. Because I know what was it, like a year ago or so, that he stepped down as chairman, then he came right back onto a board. When TKO took over, now UFC and the WWE are merged. I don't know what the fuck's going on. I kind of don't care. Again, this is something that's been a big part of my life for the first half of my life. Okay, like, you know, from childhood into my early 20s, it was a big part of my life. And I guess by extension, because I do the Wrasslin World Wrestling thing, because I still, there's a place in my heart for it. It had a big impact on me, pro wrestling did. And even though I'm not a fan of what's going on today, Bianca Blair, Charlotte Flair, Matt Riddle, all that, what the fuck, I don't give a fuck. That's beside the point. The fact is, the Hogan era, the Stone Cold era, the Brock Lesnar era, all that mattered to me. And, you know, you might be watching this on Wrasslin World Wrestling, that channel. In which case you're used to very, very, very different content. I mean, that's another thing. As an aside, real quick, you know, I'm uploading this same exact video to two different channels. One's a podcast channel, one's a fucking stupid fucking wrestling match, celebrity death match thing, whatever. But this fits into both, and I feel like I need to make it known to both audiences. Because it's hard for me right now. I just sat down not long ago and did a tier list. And I jumped on that bandwagon. Pro wrestling gimmicks. Stupid. Fun. And that's what I aim for. In any of my channels that I like, again, I operate 3. All of them, though, the common denominator is stupid fun. And it's hard to have fun when there's this dark cloud looming overhead, right? Allegations of this character. You know, if you're a fan of Wrasslin World Wrestling, you know that I have some caricatures of real life people. There's Jesse Venison. There's Vince McMahon. There's Jim Ed Cobb, which are Jesse Ventura, Vince McMahon, Jim Ross. Right? You get it if you've seen it. And if you haven't, hey, look through my backlog. I appreciate that. But it's always been all good and fun. And now that all this has come out, it's just like, oh man, what an evil, evil man. How can we support this industry? I even watched an interview with Eric Bischoff a couple days ago, talking about how he might he's throwing his hands up, he's throwing the towel in, and you know what? I'm done. I'm disconnecting myself from pro wrestling henceforth. Or he might be. Doubt it, really. That's your whole identity. You're the guy that went up against it. You're not. Whatever. That's another conversation. But the reason that I'm sitting down to talk about this is because I feel it necessary. Moving forward, I have no intention on abandoning my fanboy status as a pro wrestling fan, right? Like I have no intention of abandoning Wrasslin World Wrestling. And for those 10 of you who are out there listening to this who have been a fan of that content, just know that, yeah, things have been slow over the past couple years, and there are reasons, and I'm not going to tackle them now. I will get back to it, but also, this type of content, me talking about pro wrestling, that's going to sneak its way in too. Okay? Because undoubtedly, my fan base there. It's pro wrestling fans. But again, I feel myself getting sidetracked, and the whole point was to not make this long-winded. And here we are, like 10 minutes in, and I haven't even gotten to the point. So let me get to the point now. Vincent McMahon is a piece of shit. Okay? You know that. Everyone knows it now. And most of us who have followed this industry over the past few decades have always known it. Maybe it's a revelation to some of you out there, right? Oh my God, how could this man do these things to this poor woman? And I don't say that in that way to mock Janel Grant. I do not want to make light of it. It's very serious. These are serious allegations. Rape, trafficking, abuse of power, all this stuff. None of it's funny. Right? Yeah, we can all crack jokes about a guy, some fucking guy bordering on being an octogenarian and taking a dump on some 46-year-old's head and making her suck the dick of one of his wrestling buddies, naming sex toys after pro wrestlers. I mean, it kind of does sound funny if I'm being honest, but it's really not when you think about it. It's not funny at all. It's disgusting. It's straight up disgusting. I'm not saying that lightly. If the claims are to be believed, if what she's saying is true, and I have little doubt that it is, this is a disgusting and perverted, egomaniacal human being. My only thing is, where's the news? Who didn't know this already? Who didn't already know that Vince McMahon was like the fucking lowest scum of the earth? Just look at this motherfucker. Just look at that mustache that he fucking came up with a few years ago. That was basically him outing himself. Like, I'm the evil fucking Vincent Price Hitler of the pro wrestling. I don't know what the fuck he was trying to do with that, but it basically removed all doubt. If you didn't already know he was a piece of shit, just look at him after that mustache. But we all, wrestling fans, all of us wrestling fans, we already knew. Didn't you? Didn't we? Right? And I don't want to get into blame the victim territory. I don't want to get into make light of sexual abuse. And I won't. But let's be real. Sometimes we have to have these weird conversations, these hard conversations in which you have to remove the art from the artist, right? As a fan of black metal, right? As a fan of Burzum, of Mayhem, and I know that's going to sail over a lot of people's heads, but Varg Vikernes is one of my favorite musicians. I fucking love the dude's music. He makes, I mean, that's a subjective thing, right? Like, taste in music is a very subjective thing. Especially when he was in prison, I think he made great stuff. And this is a man who is a murderer. He stabbed another man like upwards of 60 times in the chest over a record contract or some fucking stupid shit like that. It's a man who is a white supremacist. Like, I mean, no doubt about it. This Varg is a... I'm a fan of a murderer. He makes good tunes. How the fuck do I square that? You can't. All I can say is, listen, I get that this guy is like an evil person. But I'm not going to lie and say I don't like his music. it's an icky path to walk, right? It's like if you're walking down a nature trail and you're looking at the most beautiful sky, the most beautiful natural landscape you've ever seen. And I'm not trying to say like objectively like Varg's music is that, you get what I mean though. But you have to walk through like 10 piles of dog shit and just sticky mud, and your boots are getting wet and your feet are getting soaked, and now your feet stink because they're soaked with watery dog shit. But as you're walking that path, at the same time, you're looking at beautiful landscapes. It's not a perfect scenario. There's greatness involved. There's evil or disgusting shit involved, right? And that's kind of how I've had to view pro wrestling over the years. I've known Vince McMahon was a piece of shit for fucking ever now, right? Since post-adolescence, when I formed my brain and could see what was happening in that industry. Once guys started dropping dead, and that's been going on forever, right? Guys dying before the age of 65. Man, we'd be here all fucking month talking about that list. Roddy Piper, Macho Man Randy Savage, Kurt Hennig, Scott Hall, Owen Hart, Chris Benoit. And granted, these are all unique scenarios in their own right, but they all come back to the pressures, the evils, the dark side of this industry. That's why there's a program called Dark Side of the Ring, produced by Vice, who I could say a lot about, but I'm not going to get into that here. There is a dark side of the ring. There is a cloud hanging overhead. And Vince McMahon is at that, he's sitting on top of the mountain of that industry. The uncomfortable truth is that if you are a fan of this industry, pro wrestling, you owe it to Vince. Right? Now, that industry would exist with or without him. Okay? Like, New Japan has fuck all to do with Vince McMahon, but the popularity of it here in the West, it's all owed to him. Like, he's the one. I mean, there would have been someone if it wasn't for him, but he's the one who did it. And if it were someone else, then that person would be a piece of shit. You know why? Because to be great, and I use that word in quotes, great, to achieve greatness, to achieve like billionaire god status, you have to be evil. You have to be a piece of shit to a certain degree. I've worked for a lot of companies over the years, small businesses, family businesses, mega corporations, all that. None of those businesses were successful by being nice, being altruistic, being some humanitarian effort. Capitalism works in a certain way. There is darkness inextricably linked to it. You don't get something like the WWE or Facebook or Tesla or anything. Because we can go down, we can talk about Vince McMahon, Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, Donald Trump, you can say a lot about all these guys. They're all sociopathic billionaires. But what would the world look like without these people? The world, unfortunately, it's shades of gray. There is no black and white. There is no clear good guys versus clear bad guys. And again, I don't want to spiral into some deep philosophical conversation. In fact, I've already gone on way too fucking long. Let's get back to the fucking point, which is my opinion on Vince McMahon and what is going on right now with this Janel Grant lawsuit. And I don't want to talk too long on it. Okay. I feel like maybe it's arrogant. Maybe it's fucking ridiculous for me to think that my opinion matters. It really doesn't. But if you're a fan of this channel, then maybe it does matter. Yes, he's a piece of shit. Yes, he's fucking absolutely. The claims made by Janel Grant, I do not doubt for one fucking second. Not 1 second do I doubt any of the fucking, from what I've heard. Now, I in all fairness, like I have not dissected every text message. I have not gone through every page of this lawsuit. Names like John Laurinaitis, Brock Lesnar, they come up. Well, Brock Lesnar's name doesn't come up, but former UFC heavyweight champ, superstar. Who the fuck else are we talking? We know who we're talking about. So his name did come up, as far as I'm concerned, right? And it's just like all this shade's getting cast in all these different directions. And none of it's real shocking, I got to be honest, because power corrupts. Whatever. Men are fucking disgusting. we're fucking gross. Let's be honest. I'm not trying to jump on some feminist bandwagon. Believe you me, I'm not. But when you are a man with unlimited finances and unlimited sway, and you can call all the shots, it's easy to judge, stand on your soapbox when you're someone like me, or you, the listener, right? What do you make a year? 70,000, maybe 100,000, maybe 40,000. Chances are you, the listener, are in a similar boat to me, give or take, 20 grand in terms of your fucking annual income. We're normal people. And you don't have all the opportunities of the world being thrown at your feet on a daily basis. So it's really easy for us to judge, right? What the fuck? Look at this, right? It's also easy for us to judge her. No one held a gun. I don't remember any part of the fucking allegations where Vince held a .44 Magnum to her fucking temple and said, "You're going to do this or I'm going to fucking kill you." It was all about money. All about taking care of her. She took a deal, in other words. And I know her backstory is something about she lost her parents, was in a real vulnerable spot. Vince swoops in like a fucking bird of prey and scoops her up and promises her the moon and back. And she took it. Do I blame her? Not necessarily. I don't know. I don't know what it's like to be in her headspace. But she took the deal, basically. Just like every other pro wrestler took that deal. And now we're hearing allegations of, he raped me, he pawned me off on other men, he trafficked me, he took a shit on my head and made me suck Joe Laurinaitis' dick, whatever. Horrifying. Disgusting. Abuse of power, no doubt. I have no doubt in my mind that she didn't want to do any of that shit. But she did do that stuff. And she wasn't having her life threatened, as far as I'm aware. I saw some of the text messages. She rolled with it. She went along with it. And I don't want to get into this blame the victim fucking territory either, because I do empathize with her. However, what actually happened? What are we talking about here? She took a deal. She signed a contract with the devil. And she paid for it with her dignity. She was abused. I have no doubt about that. Humiliated, degraded. And there's been irreparable damage done to her psyche. And I do feel for her. She is a victim. I have no doubt. I mean, yeah, obviously this has all got to get fleshed out in court. I don't know. Maybe she's making it all up. As far as McMahon's concerned, as far as his attorneys are concerned, this is replete with lies and falsifications and whatever. I doubt that. I do believe her. And I know, look, I don't know, but I believe it. Yeah, I believe it. You know why? Because I know he's a piece of shit. You know why? Because I've watched my childhood heroes, from Kurt Hennig to Scott Hall to Bam Bam Bigelow to Macho Man Randy Savage, to go and go and go and go and go on down the list of wrestlers that are fucking dead before the age of 60. What happened? They signed a contract. Hey, listen, you get hurt, you're an independent contractor. We can replace you at the drop of a dime. There's this immense pressure to perform, to be there, to earn the money, to be there for Vince. And if you're not there, you are replaced. There goes your livelihood. So now you find all these guys out there with chemical addictions. I gotta perform. I gotta keep my body in tip-top shape. Taking down steroids, taking down sleeping pills, taking down wake-up pills, taking down smack, taking down whatever painkillers they have to do to keep their spot. Why? Because there was this immense pressure. Because there was someone lording over them with their livelihoods in the palm of his hand. And that guy is Vince McMahon. And again, I just dropped a few names. And I could go for a lot longer. In terms of, pro wrestlers who have died long before their time. But a name that I didn't mention was Chris Benoit. I'm almost undoubtedly you're aware of that story. This is a man who gave his life, his body, everything to the business. Now that we know what we know about CTE, I'm not trying to absolve Chris from what he did. Murdering your wife and son, it's just unimaginable. But severe brain damage can lead to that sort of thing. Even something like Owen Hart, right? This isn't a guy who died because he had CTE. This isn't a guy who died from a drug overdose or from heart disease. He died because he put his faith in a company that didn't have his back. Wanted him to do a stunt that he wasn't uncomfortable with, but he felt pressured. If I don't do this, I might lose my spot. Janel Grant, if I don't do this, I might lose my spot. Where's the difference? It's the same shit. So again, none of it's surprising. It's just when I look at, if I'm going to compare Owen Hart to Janel Grant, well, I'm sorry, Janel, but at least you're alive to file that lawsuit. Okay. At the same time, God, what does money do to us? What does power do to us? We get desperate. We get hungry for it. And I know that as someone who struggles to feed his family. So it's hard for me to blame someone like Janel or Owen or Chris or any of these individuals who gave whatever it took to that business because that was their only lot in life. And speaking of Janel Grant, even though I don't know much about her, I know she lost her parents. She was in a very vulnerable spot. And here comes this guy promising her, again, the moon and back. And how can I blame her? Here comes someone wanting to lift you out of despair, promising you all this money, a spot in a company, and, maybe it's, you got to suck his dick every once in a while. Now, that's gross, but, okay, whatever. It's not that big a deal. And then it devolves into this situation where I'm selling you to other men. I'm sharing pictures of you in private text between the two of us with other superstars. And I want you to pee, and I want to shit on your head, and I want you to keep sucking. It gets into this bizarre, twisted, disgusting scenario. And I can't imagine that not having psychological impacts on the rest of your fucking life. I guess ultimately what I'm getting at here is I have this fear, maybe not fear, that's a little strong, concern, right? That my future content that I create either on Wrasslin World Wrestling or Casting Stones, because I cover the world of pro wrestling on both, now there's this just dark cloud hanging over all of it. And especially with Wrasslin World Wrestling, because there's a character called Vince McMahon, and guess who he's a fucking cartoon of, right? It might be viewed as in poor taste. Now, granted, I do represent him as an asshole and a fucking moron. But it's all in good fun. Now, do I have to make jokes about this? Do I have to abandon that character? No, I don't think I do. Because at the end of the day, he was already evil. And I knew that for fucking decades. He's terrible. Again, let's imagine us going down a list of dead wrestlers who would otherwise be alive if not for the pressures of that industry. So it's hard for me to be super, while I am sympathetic to Janel Grant, it's hard for me to feel that bad when there's this just fucking list of dead men that came before her that didn't just have their lives ruined or tarnished. They don't have lives at all. They're fucking dead. I've had to square that. And it's something I think, unfortunately, most of us have to do. You have to be able to separate the art from the artist these days, especially in the age of social media, where, if I'm going to get sidetracked for a second, we have direct links to some of these celebrities that we maybe worship or whatever, and wouldn't have known all that much personal shit about otherwise back, 20, 30 years ago. And now we can see how their minds work, and we can see how they actually operate, and we can see all the fucking ugliness. So we're forced into these positions where it's just like, yeah, I like this person, but they, sucks. You gotta learn to separate the art from the artist, though. And so yeah, I did that a long time ago. So the long and short of it is, I have no intention on changing my trajectory when it comes to Wrasslin World Wrestling, or whether it comes to casting stones, because I'll tell you, the next video that's set to come out, in fact, I think on both channels, even though I know it's probably not a good idea to be releasing the same content on two different channels, but you know what, I don't give a fuck. I do this for fun. It's about wrestling. It'll go on the wrestling channel, and it'll go on the talking channel, because I talk about wrestling. We got a pro wrestling gimmick tier list coming up. And again, that's what's motivating me to get my thoughts out there on this, because I can just, in my head, as I, am sitting down to record this tier list, I'm thinking in the background, like how people are going to perceive this given the light of current events regarding Vince McMahon, regarding the WWE. And so I just kind of felt it important, even though I'm just some low rate asshole whose opinion doesn't matter, to get those thoughts and opinions out there just on record. You want to come at me, I will defer you to this video. But that's about it. That's about all I wanted to say. Again, I didn't want to make this an hour-long podcast. Just wanted to get a few thoughts out there. You have anything to say? Have any pushback? Let me know. Put them in the comments below. And otherwise, I will look forward to seeing you in the next video. And again, that's going to be a Wrasslin tier list, gimmicks tier list. And that'll be fun. And I'm not going to talk about Vince McMahon killing people or shitting on anyone's head anymore. Thanks, and goodbye.